Pac-12 football is here. Oregon State kicks off its conference schedule against Stanford, the team coming off the big upset win at USC. What does Oregon State need to do to get the W? We have it all here on #Beavers Football, starting right now. It is a special Thursday night edition of #Beavers Football because Reser Stadium is going to be rocking on a Friday night this week as Stanford comes to town to kick off Pac-12 play, and we come to you live from Blitz Lad in Southeast Portland to get you ready for the game. I'm Katie Brown. Thank you for joining us tonight on a Thursday night along with Slade Norris and Nigel Burton, and we want you to be part of the show too. So send us your tweets, chime in on social media, #BeaversFB. And when you see what Slade is wearing a little later in the show at the OSU store, you are going to want to send in your tweets. I can promise you that.
Nigel's going to be jealous.
I'm not. Trust me.
It won't look as good on you as it does on me. They'll see.
And that's a sad thing. Sad.
It is worth watching, I'll put it that way. All right, we are 3 games down. The Beavers 2-1 after San Jose State. What did we learn against the Spartans last week as we were sort of wrapping up the non-conference schedule?
We learned that we should rest Storm for a half every other game. I mean, that guy came out of the hole running. We had a little running game. Now, let's see what we can do against a little tougher opponent because they're not going to be like the guys we played last week.
No. I mean, they're going to fly out of the same airport, and that's about where the where the consistency will pretty much end between those two schools. I think the biggest thing is I remember when we were at Oregon State and I was coaching there and Slade was playing there, that everyone talked about how slowly we started the season. The thing that I think these Beavers need to do is make sure they don't start games as slowly as they have been these last couple of weeks, because they can afford to do that against San Jose State. They're really going to struggle if they're going to, spot the Michigans and the Stanfords, 7, 14-point leads, and they get going.
This game's going to be a slugfest. We're playing a team that's as tough as Stanford. You have to hang around through the fourth quarter. If they're up by the fourth quarter, they're just going to pound the ball at you. By that time, you're tired and it's going to get away from you.
Yeah.
Well, as I was watching the San Jose State game, I was thinking, I think that Storm watched our show on Friday night, and we all completely disrespected him,
I
which
think Severson
motivated
pissed him off.
right?
That's what it was. Severson said Chris Brown should start.
Chris Brown should start. And, hey, I was right there, right behind him. You were the Storm fan there, but look at the performance that he put in there as he had a big day with 151 yards rushing on 17 attempts. Life's not bad when you're averaging almost 9 yards a carry.
It was impressive to see what he did there, especially on that third down play. When he caught that ball and he evaded about 3 different blockers, getting that first down, we really needed that to get our first touchdown in there. And, team captain there carried it.
And that's not his game. I mean, that was the thing that was also surprising is he's not that guy who's going to make guys miss in the open field. So it was encouraging to watch.
Turning back the clock, what knee?
You see his best game in 3 years. So obviously we're sort of dipping in the past there and need to see a lot more of that. Obviously you said Stanford's going to be a taller order to put up. Look at Nigel's eyes as soon as I said that.
It's going to be different this
His
week.
eyes.
I played with a guy who was kind of like that. I mean, we played San Jose State. We played Utah State before they became Utah State. He's got these great stats. And all of a sudden we play USC, and it's like, where the heck did he go? So, it's one of those, hopefully, Storm really uses this as motivation. We need to make sure that Severson's down on that gets a field pass for this game, and so Storm can see him because we're going to need everything.
I want to see him catching some balls. I mean, they're going to get in our backfield, so we got to use him. He's got great hands out there. We can use him in that aspect to supplement our run game.
Absolutely.
All right, well, after the big game against San Jose State, Storm turned his attention to look forward to the Cardinal, and here's what he had to say this week about Stanford.
Between the Ducks and Stanford, this is my favorite Pac-12 game. Honestly, I love playing Stanford. I told Coach Shaw that Pac-12s, I love playing them. A lot of respect for everybody at Stanford, a lot of respect for Coach Shaw. Defense, like you said, is going to be big, physical, hard-hitting. Something that jumps off the page at me is how sound they are in their assignments. They're not gonna miss very few assignments. You're gonna have to play mistake-free football to beat them. But the flip on that is we know what we can do. We understand our scheme, and we know we are the only people who can stop us. So just going through that, we just have to keep forward and just keep that confidence coming out the locker room, knowing we can win and knowing we should win.
And the last couple of weeks, Stanford has rebounded after that shaky start at Northwestern where they opened up with a 16-6 loss. and then rebounding at home against Central Florida. And then, of course, really surprising everyone, including the Trojans last week, by topping USC by 10. Then number 6 ranked USC announcing that, yes, this is for real. When you have those kind of results, what do you think? How do you account for that Northwestern start and then game 3 at USC? What do we expect from this team?
A little bipolar team there.
Well, I don't know. I mean, 18 to 21-year-olds. I mean, I think that's you really sum it up. I mean, they are an enigma, and they've kind of been that way, you know, especially in these last couple years with David Shaw, because you know, coming off an 8-5 season when that's not really who they were and what they have built that program to become. So, you know, obviously they started off out of the gate slowly. They didn't establish that running dominance, and it looked like they got an earful because then the next 2, and even against Central Florida, they weren't dominating the line of scrimmage. And so, you know, they did a number on USC. They got up for that game, and now we're going to see, is it Jekyll, is it Hyde? You know, are they the Northwestern UCF Stanford Cardinal, or are they the USC Stanford Cardinal?
Stanford's like a season-long tease. I mean, they'll lose some game they have no business losing, and then also the next week they'll go beat somebody like USC, and they'll have a pretty good season until you finally start believing them. Yeah, maybe some playoff contention, and all of a sudden they'll lose to a Washington State or somebody like that going through. They never have a full, complete season where they played up to the potential the whole way through.
Well, maybe their mulligan happened earlier in the first in the season.
I think that's what they're hoping. But now, I mean, a shorter week. They just had a great win against USC. It's that natural letdown leading to this week.
Exactly.
The coaching, David Shaw obviously is, you know, stepped in seamlessly in that program, have had some ups and downs there, but at least they have stability in the coaching staff that has been there for quite some time.
Well, when Derek Mason left, I mean, that changed things a little bit, but they seemed after a year that they've got their foothold back on. I thought Storm's his comments were interesting, considering, you know, I think it's been since 2009 was the last time that Oregon State as a team ran for over 100 yards against Stanford. So the fact that he looks forward to this game is a little interesting. But, you know, I mean, hey, it's great talk. Hopefully it's great attitude. And half the way of pulling these games off is just believing that you can. It's just knowing that, hey, we can get this done. And hopefully there's that same confidence level going on in the locker room.
You got to like a guy that likes the challenge. He's not going to like the easy games. He wants that challenge every year. He wants to go show them they can run against him.
Muhammad Ali had a great line. He said, "Everybody talks tough till they get punched in the mouth." So, you know, we'll see what happens, and hopefully he's able to meet the challenge.
Well, we're just getting started, and of course, one of the storylines, which we will get to, is will he play or won't he play? That's the big question this week with Stanford's quarterback. So coming up, What's on Tap, brought to you by Widmer Brothers Brewery. We get to Kevin Hogan and Stanford's quarterback who suffered an ankle injury against USC. And there are questions. He is listed as a game time decision. What is the latest on his situation heading into the game at Oregon State? And then also dissecting Stanford's defense. We'll break it down and see what Storm and his side are up against. And of course, the most dangerous Cardinal on the field. We know they're all smart, but who's the most dangerous on the football field? We'll get to that. Stick with us. We're just getting started here on #BeaversFB. Slade proof.
Not a lot of things are Slade proof.
I think that's gonna be a registered trademark. Absolutely.
What'd you think of the pants, though? Did you like them?
Go ahead, Katie.
They were snug.
Yeah, they were a little
snug.
Tight, buddy. A little tight.
Well, you know what? I Googled around, used the old Google machine. I found some orange pants on you guys, too, so let's take a look.
Wow. I wish my stomach looked like that.
What do you mean? That's you right there.
I'm taller than
Google
Nigel.
never lies. Hanging out with Benny.
Yeah. That is
hilarious.
You know, the last guy who fired shots like that ended up with nipple sweat as the hashtag. So hey, Mama Norris, I'm sorry. I've known both your boys for
Hey, she's
so
watching
long.
tonight, too.
Your son might die on that.
It is an orange out at Reserve Stadium on Friday night, right?
Orange
so you're
out everything.
And we got to give you props. You're one of the honorary captains for the game.
I will be down there. Bill Swan cut and I. It's going to be a fun time. Go watch the Beavs under the lights.
All right, so before we move back to the game, love the pants, but it is time to talk shop again. Kevin Hogan, you think he's going to play or not?
You know what? I don't know what Coach thinks, but watching his ankle turn like that, I've had my own ankle sprained. At least if they're gonna shoot him up, that's one thing, but I don't know if he can get out there.
Well, Gary Anderson says, I would be shocked if Kevin Hogan doesn't play. That tweeted in. And, well, you see that ankle sprain right there, turn back.
Look at that. I would be, he's shocked. I'm flabbergasted then if he does play. That's hard to come off of.
The thing is, he finished the game. You're talking about a guy who's a senior. You're talking, he's only got so many games left in his career. If he plays in the NFL, I think that's a stretch. And so, he's only got so many games left in his career. He literally would have to have that thing fall off for him not to play in this game. Now, does that mean that you're not going to see, Keller Chris or some other guys play? I think depending upon how the game goes, you could see some of them, but I would agree. I would be stunned if he didn't play.
I don't know, man. I had a shoulder injury, and I finished the game out feeling fine. All of a sudden, that next week, I was out for the next month with an AC joint sprain. Maybe he's just tougher than me.
Well, you said it, I didn't. And it's different when you're talking a defensive lineman with a shoulder versus a quarterback and an ankle.
Yeah.
And especially with the kind of offensive line they have, I think they would definitely give it a go to see if he can sit in the pocket, deliver, run their simple play action pass game, hand the ball off to McCaffrey, just to be that threat.
Well, if he does trot out to start that game, you can bet Oregon State's defense is going to be licking their chops to try and get at him and force him back to the sideline.
Oh, it'll be a wheel of blitz.
Yeah.
Kalani will just basically hit the wheel. Whatever blitz pops up, that's the one we're running.
All right, well, next man up, if he doesn't play or doesn't play the entire game, there are two guys behind him, Ryan Burns, Keller Chris. They both have one career snap there. Ryan Burns, a sophomore, Keller Chris, a redshirt freshman, and we've heard this week that people believe Keller would be getting the first call to come in his place.
Yeah, the word down at the farm is that he is basically the second coming of Andrew Luck. So I think they have a lot of confidence in handing him the keys. I think they feel as though he's a much better passer than Kevin Hogan is. Just Kevin has such a command, not just of the offense, but of the entire team, that's why they've kept Kevin Hogan being the guy. But Keller Christian. Whoa, I went way back for that one, right? Keller Christ, is going to be not just the heir apparent, but the bar raiser there on the farm in the next couple of years.
So are you trying to say if Hogan's out, that's not really much of a bar dropping there? You think this guy's just going to come step right in?
I will go back, let's see, what year are we talking? 2004, Oregon State. We're playing at LSU. We are taking it to the returning quarterback of a national championship team, and some freshman trots out in the fourth quarter who's 6'7" and all this other stuff, Jamarcus Russell, and we were begging for the other guy, Russell, to get back into the game. So hopefully it doesn't end up being one of those situations.
I wish you still would have played that well when I was with him on the Raiders.
Well, we had a tweet there from Bradley who was saying, if Hogan doesn't play, what should we expect to see changes in Stanford's offense? What's their strategy going to be?
I don't see.
In other words, are they going to run the ball a whole lot more?
Well, they do that anyway.
Yeah.
With a quarterback, his best friend's the tight end. So you're going to see more tight end, I guess, and more running the ball. They do that already. That's their strength.
Right. And to be honest with you, if anything, I actually think you might see a little bit more drop back pass game because that's Keller's deal. That's the thing that he can do even better than Kevin Hogan, who needs a little bit more of the run game and the play action to function better in the offense.
And Christian McCaffrey, who we are seeing here do his thing, who has had a nice performance against USC last week.
I'll tell you what, he is a fun guy to watch, and I'm still trying to figure out how his last name is McCaffrey. I was at Denver when his dad played, and his dad is like 6 foot. He feels like he's 6'8". He's about 6'4". So I never met Mom. I'm wondering, she's got to be like 3'11" for him to even
average that out.
But he is such a fun player to watch. They let him run the speed option and some things, which is really not David Shaw's MO, to let guys kind of have fun with the offense. They just kind of do what they do. But he's a special little guy to watch. It's fun.
How do the Beavers contain him? What do they need to do?
He does so many things.
I don't say shut him down, because we're not going to be able to shut him down, right? How do you contain him? Limit him?
The one thing you have to do is tackle well, and that's the thing they struggled with at Michigan when they played a similar offense, is the times they did gap out correctly and one guy was left to make that tackle, missed the tackle. They need to tackle like they did last week, and in particular they did against Weber State. I think the other thing you do is sometimes we would actually say, listen, this is the guy that we have got to hit. You've got to hit them often, hit them all the time. Don't stop. Talk to them if you need to. So it kind of, sets that tone early on in the game that this is, if you're going to beat us, it's not going to be with him. And a lot of times it's just an attitude. But they're going to have to be sound. They're going to have to be stout. But Stanford's offensive line has not necessarily been old Stanford. It was that one drive at USC that's had everybody talking. But if you look at their previous 2 ball games, they're not moving people off the line of scrimmage the way that they had in the past.
If you look at the success we've had with our run defense, watch those 2 games on opposite sides of Michigan, it's more than one person hitting the running back. I mean, we're rallying to the ball every single time. You watch the second half of Michigan, and all of a sudden it's one guy with an arm tackle, it's another guy just one-on-one tackling. We've got to make sure that we have more than one guy hitting them every single play. Like you said, hit him and hit him often.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, feel free to chime into their conversation or throw them a tough question and see if they can handle it.
I'll put it on Coach.
Yeah, where's I Am Orange when we need him?
Exactly. It is, of course, this #BeaversFB. Later on, Nigel will reveal the most dangerous players on the Stanford's team. And next, we turn our attention to the defense.
We have a high standard. We have a lot of guys who will be first-time starters, but a lot of guys that played football. A guy like Peter Columbai led us in sacks last year. He's got a chance to be a special player. Blake Martinez, I think, is going to be a household name by the end of the year. I think we have a lot of guys that haven't played a lot of football, but they've shown us what they're capable of.
There's a lot of guys that no one's seen yet that are going to be wow factors once the season happens, and they're kind of just going to look at it as, whoa, where'd these guys come from? And it's a lot to do with work ethic in the weight room and in film study, from our D linemen gaining 20 pounds each to get bigger from their freshman year to their sophomore year, to our secondary that work nonstop with one of our key veterans, Ronnie Harris, on just working on fundamentals and little things that are going to improve them from that freshman to sophomore year.
All right, the tweet in from Sydney saying, what are Stanford's defensive strengths?
Looking at them, they run their scheme so well. Their front 7 takes care of their jobs, so they don't have to run a ton of blitzes. They can get a great pass rush with just their base package. And that comes a lot with their linebackers being assignment sound. Martinez is a great athlete, does a great job for them. Kevin Anderson, he's not in this week, so that will affect them. Got my old boy from Jesuit, Alfieri, coming in for his first start, which I want to root for him, but he picked the wrong school, so now I can't.
Yeah, that was the worst recruiting job you've ever done. Ever. I think the thing to expect is the fact that with the 3-4 defense, they run it better than 95% of the teams in college football and probably 50% of the teams in the NFL. It's their versatility. The fact that they don't have to pressure with linebackers in a 3-4 is scary because most teams have to actually do those things. And so it's the versatility. It's the tough part for a young quarterback when you're facing this kind of defense is the fact they can bring blitzes from any angle at any time because of it's basically like having a defense split in half with a mirror. Whereas most defenses that run a 4-3, it's always tiered one side or the other because you have a middle linebacker, you can't split into 2. The 3-4, you can literally draw a line right down the middle, and you can bring whatever pressure's on one side, you can do the same thing on the other. And so you can make it look like it's coming from one side and actually bring it from the other. So that's going to be the challenge for Seth Collins, is recognizing, when things are coming, when they're not, when guys are dropping out.
And they do a great job holding that shell and not showing it until right the last second.
Right.
Well, there is one category where they're last in the Pac-12 right now, and that's in sacks. They only have 3 so far this season, averaging 1 a game.
Well, sometimes sacks can be a little bit overblown.
I want to see quarterback hits.
Yeah, exactly. The more important stat is always hitting the quarterback. And I know, obviously, people say, well, when you sack a guy, don't you hit him? Well, it depends. I mean, a lot of times you'll get a guy who drops back a pass, he'll scramble, get tackled for a 1-yard loss. That's, technically it's a sack. It's not the same as that guy standing in the pocket, delivering a ball, but having somebody come through scot-free and hit that guy and hit the quarterback. And that changes his not only his ability, but his want to sit in the pocket and wanting to look and stare at the rush and all those things. Those are much more important to a defense that wants to bring pressure than necessarily sacks.
I remember a game for myself back at Oregon State where I didn't get a single sack. I didn't get a single anything really in the game, a couple of tackles, but Coach Joe said it was the best game I had that season because I was in the quarterback's face all game long, always causing pressure, making him uncomfortable, but yet I didn't register really anything.
Right.
I thought you were going to say it was because Coach Burton said you just weren't very good.
Oh, come on.
Coach is out by that point.
I wish I had more bad players who got drafted in the 4th round. Are you kidding me? Jeez. I know it was the Raiders, but still.
People wanted me in the fifth.
place.
Yeah, I promise you, I'll get drafted by the Montreal Alouettes in the 4th round.
All right.
I'll take it.
Switching to Oregon State's offense, Robert writes in, when is the tight end going to be part of this offense?
I hope soon. We got a guy with Caleb Smith that can catch some passes, and somebody has to step up. We can't just keep going and send in Villeman long and just hoping his height can catch the ball. I mean, we've got to have somebody with intermediate routes.
That was a great question. So I actually looked it up on my Microsoft Surface. I wish I was, that I had some deal with Microsoft. No. But Troy.
By the way, the
You may now.
keyboard's pink right here, just so you guys know. You can't see it. The
Safe in my
keyboard's
mandate.
pink.
I'm good with this. So Troy Fumagalli was actually the 3rd leading receiver for Wisconsin when Coach Anderson was there. Because obviously people will say, well, the tight end should get involved because the history of tight ends at Oregon State, well, it's a completely different offense. And so you really have to look at, well, what has happened in Wisconsin? Their 3rd leading receiver last year was actually the tight end position. So especially with the fact that Villeman's had to carry such a load, Bolden's kind of disappeared. You would say that it's time for somebody to step up. Somebody's got to help in the passing game. Otherwise, it's going to be a long offensive season for the Beavs.
And Ricky Ortiz, our star fullback, went to defense. We can't rely on him anymore.
Yeah, maybe we can do a little, since we were talking Jesuit earlier, maybe a little Owen Marisic action. Maybe he can come back, play a little bit fullback, and maybe.
He can do anything. He's starting a guacamole, avocado orchard once he graduates. He can do anything.
Hey, as long as he keeps getting interceptions, that's all we care about, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Well, we not sure about Kevin Hogan, talked about that, but we do know about Oregon State's quarterback, and we will get to Seth Collins next. But first, Mark Masseri, the Beavers' deputy AD, he's watching tonight.
Mark, you were extremely bored.
The Slade
My gosh.
Slade Norris's polling days, #orange pants. Are you going to wear those on the field?
They beat me to it. You know what? I should. I got to go stop by.
You wear those?
My gosh.
Yep.
All right.
I got to get that.
Well, Seth Collins, he'll be in uniform. We'll turn our attention to how he has come along this season coming up next.
40,000 people.
Well, we turn our attention now to Seth Collins, and it's time for our Toyota interview. Toyota Let's Go Places, and in tonight's edition, offensive coordinator Dave Baldwin talks about his quarterback on 3rd down.
We practiced it hard, and we've come close on a couple. We've missed a couple throws. We lined up wrong last week on 2 of them. It's ourselves just getting familiar with it, and we're getting close, and the big one that's disappointing is 3rd and 2. We've missed on those 3rd and 2s a couple times, and that's something that's a statement, and we got to make sure that if we're going to run the ball, we got to make that happen.
And Seth ran a lot, but yet he finally did slide once like a baseball player.
Like I said earlier, he's, we want him to slide, but he's also like the 3rd leading quarterback in the country rushing the ball or something like that. He's still got to run the ball for us. And slide, I think he should have slid one other time, and he's got ball security problems. We got to hang on to the ball a little bit better.
And, well, the numbers do tell the story here. The earlier in the series he runs, the better it is, averaging over 10 yards on 1st down, just over 7 on 2nd down, and having a tough time on 3rd down.
What do you do, Coach, in that 3rd down, 3rd and 2? How can they improve?
Well, 3rd and 2 is an interesting down to try to run your quarterback on. I mean, I guess, unfortunately, I think that's a result of the fact that the offensive line isn't establishing the line of scrimmage the way you want. I mean, 3rd and 2 should just be, in a read zone system, should just be an inside zone play. Call it, get you 2 yards, move on to the next. So if they're counting on their quarterback to convert 3rd and 2s, that's a little bit of a sign.
And Coach Baldwin.
Ahmad Bradshaw up there?
Yeah, Coach Baldwin. He had it right. 3rd in the country for a quarterback in rushing behind Ahmad Bradshaw of Army, and then SMU's Matt Davis there. So right around that 300-yard mark.
He is a talented player, and I think he did a great job this week as opposed to the previous games, knowing when to pull it and when to hand it off. I mean, reading that defensive end, I thought a couple of times in the first couple of games he was a little iffy on that, but I think he got a lot better as those games went on.
Yeah, as a young guy in your first couple of games, especially when you're having to make decisions on the fly like that, it's, sometimes you predetermine, it's like, and Slade, I bet you remember when you first learned an A game, right? When we were, a lot of times the defensive tackles, it's a reactionary stunt versus what the center does. Well, sometimes you'd see the tackles would be talking to each other like, okay, you go first this time.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's not the way it works. And with Seth running the read zone, sometimes it's like, okay, this time I'm going to keep the ball, and and all of a sudden you get blasted in the face. And he's starting to learn that, just take what the defense gives you. If the defensive end's crashing, keep it. If he's at any gray area in your mind what he's doing, just give it to the running back and let things happen. And sometimes you just have to learn from messing it up.
And trust that running back did the job, and Storm did this last week, so I think it'll be a lot easier for him going forward.
All right, another tweet coming up here that Justin writes in, what do #GoBeavs wide receivers need to do for success this week? We kind of talked earlier about they need some help there. Jordan can't do it all on his own.
Catch the football. Catch the football. I mean, he's done a nice job. I mean, when you watch those guys in practice, when we were there in camp, it was one of those, hey, Victor Bolden is the guy, and Jordan Villeman's going to be this guy who can be a great second, and then you got this young, this guy Hunter Jarman, and really Victor's kind of not been the guy that we thought he was going to be.
Should we sort of diss him on this show the way we did Storm last week?
Yeah.
Maybe he's watching and get it going.
I did last week. I don't want to keep ragging on him, but when you look at that 8 receptions for 60 yards, and you're a speed guy, you're supposed to be that Antonio Brown, that breaking the top off the defense, getting those deep catches, and all of those have had to go to Jordan Villeman because of his height. And we can't just have that go to Jordan every single time. We have to have somebody else that will step up and get those long throws. And even the intermediate ones, there's been a lot where it's gone right through his hands.
It was one of those things where, against Weber State, Seth threw a nice, I think it was Seth, maybe it was Marcus, threw a nice post pattern. It was beautifully placed. He had to lay out to get it, but as a Division I Pac-12 receiver, you've got to make that catch, and he didn't make it. And so, the thing that we always used to tell defenses when you had young quarterbacks is you've got to help this guy grow up by being sound, by being the strength of our team until he's ready to take the reins. I was there with Cap when he was a young guy and all those different things. And so with the receiving corps, it's the same thing. Listen, help the guy out so that he can get a little confidence, and then he can start winging it, and then he knows he can do it. If you're not helping him, he's just going to get frustrated.
I do have to say, though, he did step up with the fly sweep, and he made some guys miss finally, and he made some moves, got a lot of first downs. So he did better in that aspect of his game.
Do we want to keep the
season.
Katie, hey, let's rag on him a little bit?
Yeah,
Maybe he gets better. 'Cause I also remember that fly sweep, giving one back to Michigan.
I was going to say.
In a great
The fumble.
situation.
Security, yeah.
So, love you. I really do. I think you're a great kid. Time to step up. Prove these guys wrong, but just remember we're doing this on purpose.
Oh, he said prove these guys wrong.
He's trying to play it both ways, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, it is almost time for Nigel to size up the most dangerous players who will be wearing a Stanford uniform tomorrow night. That piece when we come back. Well, you can join the conversation here on #VeersFootball, and you can win prizes on the CSN Fan Zone. Just go to csnnw.com/fan zone there. It's a fan reward program. You earn points for interacting with online content. You can sign up either on Facebook or Twitter and look at the prizes. You get gift cards, iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, and also, of course, CSN merchandise, which we all have, and it's lovely. So you definitely want that. All right. It's time to take a look at the most dangerous players for Stanford. Brought to you by Standard TV and Appliance, setting the standard since 1947. Here is Nigel with Burton's breakdown.
Well, one, I still don't like that picture, mainly because I don't look as good in that top as he does in those pants. But, the one thing when we're talking about the Stanford team and all, who's their most dangerous, this is not, this In Focus Mondo pad is not big enough to list all the names. I actually left McCaffrey off this list. So let's take a look at the In Focus Mondo pad collaboration that works. And we'll look at the 4 guys that I really want to take a look at in this game. If we're really starting from the bottom, if we're going to start it all with the bottom, is going to be Austin Hooper. Austin Hooper is going to be the leading receiver. He's the leading receiver right now for Stanford. He is the guy that has really replaced Kajus as their red zone threat, the guy who really Kevin Hogan's counted on for that big-time catch. You can see against USC, not only was he scoring touchdowns, but he was also making critical plays in traffic, double covered. I mean, those things are special for a guy to be able to make those kind of plays in critical moments in critical games. So I'm kind of disrespecting him by putting him at 4, but when you see that picture, his profile picture, you can see why I had to put him at 4. He's going to have to change that for me to put him up.
Hey, Coach, with a tight end like that, we can't run a lot of sub packages to get a DB on him. What do? We got young linebackers.
The biggest thing you can do with a tight end who's a real guy is you've got to make sure you put somebody in his face on the line of scrimmage. If you can jam him, disrupt his releases, mess up the timing between him and the quarterback, that's the best thing you can do. That's why it's a lot tougher for tight ends to be factors than wide receivers who have a lot more space to work with. But he's so special, for a guy to be the second leading receiver as a tight end, is a huge deal. The next guy is Blake Martinez. Blake is Mr. Everything there at Stanford. He's a leading tackler. He's the leading interceptor. He's leading the team in pass deflections. He's leading the team. I think he's leading the team in pretty much every category, including trips to the salad bar. I mean, it's unbelievable what this guy does. And if you watch the SC game as it was coming down to the wire, I mean, he was the guy that was making play after play after play. I don't think he got all the credit for all the tackles he actually made because he was in on everything. It really got ridiculous. And so he's the guy that if you want to watch their defensive dominance and what makes Stanford special, watch Blake Martinez. In terms of the second player, I'm actually going to say Keller Christ.
Wow.
Because I really feel like he is going.
You're hot on him.
He is going to be the guy that if Kevin Hogan doesn't play, he is going to be the biggest factor on whether they win or lose this football game. I think if I'm Oregon State and I'm Kalani Sitake, I am loading the front. I'm doing everything I can. I'm going to put 9 guys, 10 guys, 11. Hell, I'll see if I can sneak a 12th guy on the field to stop the run and see if this young guy can beat me. He's talented, he's special, but he's young. And so he's a guy that I think will be a huge factor, but nothing bigger than the quarterback position. I know it's cliche, but he touches the ball every single play. And so you can't undervalue the importance of that position. He played out of his mind against USC, something that Stanford fans have been waiting really to see him play in this fashion. And so, coming off the best game of his career, I would expect for him to try to continue that pattern. But really, like I said, he was playing out of his skull, and he was really benefiting from the fact that they ran the ball so well against USC. And so if the Beavs can hold that run game and try to contain it, you're not going to stop it. I think you really change things for Kevin Hogan because he's not a drop back, pick you apart kind of guy. He's a guy that needs the play action game. He needs you to suck up on the run so he can throw over the top of you. He's not going to dissect you the way that I think Keller Christ actually has the ability to do.
So let me ask you a question. You got Keller up there at number 2. Who do we want? Do we want a Kevin Hogan with no mobility?
Oh, you got to go
mobility is a big part of his game, moving that pocket around and everything, adding that to his repertoire. Or do we want a Keller Christ who's unproven, yet you're saying the next Andrew Luck? You heard it here first.
Yeah, sometimes, since I quoted Muhammad Ali, right, you might as well do another quote. The devil you know is sometimes, right, say it feels better than the devil you don't, right? And so I would rather probably play Kevin Hogan with a bum wheel than I would Keller Christ.
Know what you're going to get.
That, you don't really know what you're going to get. You don't know what to prepare for the same way. And the way that he chucks the ball around, you don't want the second coming.
I'll still take the redshirt freshman. Put that redshirt freshman on the field. I just want to see.
I don't know. Remember last year at Washington State?
All right.
That guy came in.
Kerry Campbell writes in, early in his career, Seth Collins reminds me of Reynolds, the quarterback at Navy, now a senior, has 13 games with 3 or more rushing touchdowns. Look, Kerry pulling out some knowledge.
Yeah, that was deep. I'm hoping that we're hoping he throws the ball better.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I don't know if I want a quarterback doing 3 touchdowns a game rushing.
Yeah, I'm sure that was meant as a compliment. I'm not sure Seth would take it that way.
I said the coaches take it that way, but she took it that way. All right, when you look at the totality of the game, take a look at the matchups everywhere. What benefits the Beavers in this game the most?
I'm going to go a little. Well, why don't you go first, and I'll give my 2 cents.
It's hard because this is a strong team, but I got to go with our secondary. I don't have a lot of faith in Stanford's wide receivers. They rely so much on the tight ends for that passing game. I'm much more worried about those guys than I am the guys outside. I think with Larry Scott and our boys, they can lock down Rector and their boys. I think we have a matchup there that we can win. Maybe get a few picks, especially if we had Keller in there and he's not the next coming, not the god you're saying he is. Get some pressure in his face. I think we can make some errant throws and make some picks.
And they've had issues catching the ball as well. I mean, yeah, the Northwestern game, Michael Rector drops a ball that would have been huge for them to get back into that game. So
they use McCaffrey so much in the passing game. I mean, more than the wide receivers.
He's actually the leading receiver.
Yeah, which is crazy as a running back.
I totally agree. I actually think the thing that benefits the Beavs the most, you guys, Reser Stadium. That is going to be an enormous factor. People underestimate for a young football team. Now, for a veteran team that's been through all the wars, home and away sometimes isn't that big a deal. But when you're talking about the youngest team in college football, there's nothing better than being back in a safe environment, sleeping in your own bed, not having to get on a plane, student section's back and they're loud. You're talking about a Stanford team coming off back-to-back road games, 6 days apart. I think the biggest factor helping the Beavs is going to be Reser Stadium. So you got to do everything we can to make sure that place is loud, welcoming, all those different things. And I think for a young team, they will feed off of that energy, especially if things are going well early.
And you talk about the short week, which of course is the case for both teams, but the Beavers are home, and Stanford's away and then away again. That's a lot of traveling in there, disruption coming into such a short week.
Yeah. It's set up. It's ready to go. It's just all about rocking it.
Well, that's
Friday Night Magic in Corvallis.
That's one thing really that we hadn't talked about briefly before we break. That big win when you knock off the number 6 team in the nation that people weren't expecting after their start to the season. Is there momentum going from that? Let down, or you
I think
discount
anybody
all that?
who thinks that teams like Stanford with that kind of senior presence that they have thinks that they're let down hasn't been in a locker room very much before. Because when we beat USC, when you were there, the first thing out of our mouths, it wasn't even the coaches, it was the players, was we had to respond against Arizona State to make sure people didn't think that was a fluke or that wasn't us. That was from the players. So this team, with their senior leadership, I would not anticipate a letdown. But, Oregon State can win this thing if they take control of the game.
Great win. Prove it next week.
Yep.
And if the fans do their part to help create the environment,
Do
right?
your part.
All right, well, touched on a few things right there, but when we come back, it'll be keys to the game. Nigel pointed out the fans. What does the team have to do on the field tomorrow night? Reser Stadium will be the place to be in 24 hours as Oregon State has a night game, which we're pretty used to here in these parts now against Stanford to kick off the Pac-12 season. And of course, we have you covered on Beavers coverage every week here on CSNNW with Talkin' Beavers Wednesday nights. Slade, Lindsay, and Mike Parker get it started there at 7 o'clock. And then it's Inside the Huddle on Thursdays with Coach Anderson. And of course, normally we are with you on Friday nights. # Beavers football starting at 9 o'clock. Next week is a bye week for the Beavers, so we will be back in that normal slot in 2 weeks on Friday night. And then Saturday morning, join the Game Day, CSN Game Day crew at 9 o'clock to get ready for that day. All right, well, they head into the Pac-12 season after their first 3 games. Coach Anderson made a comparison this week between Stanford and the team that they already saw at the Big House in Michigan.
They want to be physical. They want to, play action pass when they're given the opportunity. They will do a little bit more within than Michigan did as far as if Michigan was going to get into an 11 personnel, so 3 wide receivers and 1 tight end, then they would get into that, and they would build those formations with 3 wide receivers at that point. Stanford, on the other hand, is going to stay with that tight end in the field and possibly the other wide receiver, the other running back at times, and then flex them out that way. So it's you don't see the subs to get to the spread offense as much with Stanford. They'll play with their base people, but there's a mindset of physicality, downhill run game. It's been that way with Stanford for a long time, and I'm sure that's not going to change at any time this year because they're pretty talented up front on that offensive line and some good backs that know how to run those plays.
Remember way back when Stanford was like, oh, good, we get to play Stanford this week. It's been a while since we've had that. Alex writes in, a healthy Victor Bolden and Seth Collins showing more ball security. That's his key to the game. And yes, we've been talking about Victor getting it going. And Jessica says the O-line protecting Collins and more passes from Collins, more from his arm. And so they're not relying on his feet so much. Well, when you take a look at, talked about a couple things in the show already, but specifically top 3 things that they need to do, Oregon State, to win this game. Start with you, Nigel.
Well, I'm going to be Mr. Repetitive. The number one, the most important stat in college football is Slade. Oh, geez, I thought I taught him something. Anyway, takeaways. It's about takeaways. I said he needed +3 against Michigan. He didn't listen to me then. He doesn't listen to me now. They needed +3 against Michigan. They didn't get it. They lost, and they lost big. They get 3 against Stanford. They give themselves a shot. Consistently have to run the football. And not only does that mean yards per carry, but they have to consistently do it. I think you need at least 4 yards a carry, and I would say they have to have 25 rushes. The final thing is special teams. Whenever there's been these big upsets for Oregon State, Sammy Strotter against USC, you keep going down a list of things. special teams always plays big, whether it's a punt blocked, a return kick, any of those things. That's going to be the third key for me, and I think the Bees pull it off.
I like yours, Coach, and my third also is a special teams. Well, I won't even talk about that because you covered it all. My number one, though, is win the time of possession. Stanford's D they're great, but they're not deep. If we can go through and run them all over the field, get that time of possession, those short plays, all marching down, we can do that. My second one is win the third down. We've been so great with that. If we get them on third down, that chainsaw comes out, we'll be great.
Nice.
And clean on special teams.
Clean them.
No snaps over heads and things like that. All right, going to be a great night at Rezo Stadium. Check out Slade in his orange pants at center field, the honorary captain. Let's go, Beavs. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks.